Good morning, everyone. I'm Margie Bolero Horton, Assistant Registrar in the Marketing, Recruitment and Communications Office, the University of the West Indies Mona campus. Thank you for joining us with us today for this revision workshop for CAPE Unit 2, Sociology. The UWI Mona campus is mindful of how COVID-19 has disrupted your normal school life in unprecedented ways. This revision workshop is just one of the many ways that the campus is responding to the needs, your needs, our prospective students. We do hope that it will help to make a very positive difference in your readiness for this exam. Before I introduce our facilitator, let me share with you some very good news from the university. The campus has extended its application period so that those of you who have not yet applied may be able to do so now. Applications are welcomed for all our programs, except for the Faculty of Medical Sciences, where only the basic medical sciences physiology is still available to undergraduate students. The application link is www.mona.uwi.edu/apply. The other good news is that the tuition fees remain the same as at the last academic year. A few protocols for this meeting. If you're listening from outside Jamaica, we're inviting you to let us know who you are by writing your name, the name of your country. We invite you also to write your questions in the chat for Dr. Beckford. He will try his best to answer as many as possible, if not all. So your facilitator today is Dr. Orville Beckford, lecturer in the Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work here at the UWI Mona. Dr. Beckford has three great passions. One, he's passionate about his family, sociology, and teaching. Thank you for participating in this CAPE Unit workshop. We trust that all your questions will be answered and you will be ready to sit your exams. Dr. Beckford.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bolero Horton. Welcome, students. Welcome. I know it has been a very difficult semester. You have tried your best and you have stayed to the end in terms of you get ready for exam shortly. So we welcome you. Those people who are from outside the Caribbean, we welcome you especially. It's always good to have our brothers and sisters from the other islands being in the class with us, and so we welcome you. We are going to CAPE Sociology Unit 2. Why Unit 2 rather than 1? Because 2 is the more difficult of the two units. 1 is a prerequisite for 2, and so almost all the things that you learned in 1, you are going to use it in Unit 2, especially those sociological theories that you learned in 1, you'll be using it in 2. Issues of religion and so on that you did in 1, you will need it in 2. So it is important that you carry what you learned over from Unit 1 into Unit 2. Now, Unit 2, I will admit, have some very difficult areas, some of which I will seek to address in this lecture today, and I will also feed your questions. At the end of the presentation itself will be made available to you, and I'll also send you a question paper, an MCQ paper, with about 45 or 50 questions, and they'll all be answered. So you can use them to prepare for your exam, which is very close. So as we start, as usual, I start by saying, what are you expected to do in the examination? This is entirely MCQ, multiple choice questions. So what it means that you will have to know your definitions, and you must have an idea of everything. The thing with when you have essays, you can pick your essays and just talk on the essays and you're okay. But now you have multiple choice questions that cover the entire syllabus. Your CAPE syllabus, sociology, should be with you like your Bible. not saying that it is a Bible, but like your Bible. You keep it with you, and you make sure that you have covered all the areas in it. Because with the MCQ, there's nothing that you can afford to leave out or not know. So it is very important that at this juncture, that you have your syllabus with you. You can download it from the CAPE website, from the CXC website. It's free, and you can make sure that you have it to ensure you have covered all the areas on the syllabus. That is very important. So when I was doing this revision, what I did, I went back to the CAPE syllabus to look at what is it that the syllabus required of you. So we will start. So we start first by looking at the sociological perspective. We start with population. So it is important that you understand the link between your Unit 1, Module 1, and this Unit 2. Very important that you understand the link between your Unit 1 and your Unit 2. So in the Unit 1, you had sociological theories. So we did things like functionalism. We come back to them when we look at not so much population, but crime and deviance, religion, issues such as poverty, crime, and so on. So it is important that you make sure you understand your Unit 1 sociological theories. So functionalism, Marxist conflict, interactionism, and of course feminism. Very important, because you are going to be going back to them over and over as you try to understand the various areas with respect to Unit 2. So we start with population. Population is one of those, the term I would use is ubiquitous, which means it's everywhere. So you will get questions. I keep checking some of the past papers. You have about 10 questions I've seen on each past paper on population. You have many, many questions from many, many different areas on population. We can't go into all the areas this morning because we do not have the time to go through all the areas at this juncture. So what we'll do, we'll touch on some of the main ones. So here we are looking now at the population theory, the sociological perspective of population. So we start with Malthusian. And here we say population control is really about controlling population growth. What you'll find out that what is central to most of the theories is the issue of population growth. What's happening with growth will is determined by birth rate, death rate, and other issues such as birth control, family planning, and so on. So we're really focusing on growth. So population growth will result from more people surviving diseases, being better fed, and more comfortable, because we figure that if you are getting good food, you do not have much disease, or you have survived these diseases, and you are comfortable, then of course we'll see population growth. But of course there are many other issues, as you know, fertility. The fact that I'm well fed don't mean that I can have children. The fact that I am comfortable doesn't mean that I can have children. And there are many other issues that will result in people not wanting to have children. If the political climate is unstable, you might not want to bring a child into this world, into that unstable climate. Issues of crime and violence and weather, because when crimes are high, it is the males who die. And so what we see, people tend to have more, again, male child, believe it or not, to replace those who are dying. All right, so these are some of the issues. So the Malthusian theory asserts that whilst the food supply could only increase arithmetically, you know what we mean by increase arithmetically? 1, 2, 3, that is arithmetically. Population growth occurred geometrically. Just like the COVID-19, we say to you that what the government have done is to try to restrict the spread, because once it started move from arithmetically spreading to geometrically spreading, we are in serious trouble, because geometrically spreading means we go from 2, 4, 8, 16, and so it increased geometrically. That is the one that is disastrous. So whereas food supply so increase arithmetically, so yes, we can get more chocho to buy, yes, we can get more yams and so on. If the population is increasing geometrically, then you're going to outstrip the food supply. So which is why Malthus' argument was that that the food supply will increase arithmetically, but the population growth is going to increase geometrically. What are the implications of this? Part of the implication is that if we outstrip the food supply, what happens? We have famine. We have social issues. We have issues of poverty because, of course, the rich people will be able to get food to buy from overseas or import food. The poor people can't. So there will be many social issues of crime, violence, social inequality resulting from that mix where you have the population increasing in terms of growth geometrically, but the food only increasing arithmetically. So Malthus theories before, of course, notice here I said before the ready availability of family planning, they theorized that population could only be checked by natural or man-made disasters such as war, plague, flood, earthquake, etc. In fact, the argument that he used is that countries, the very, very populated countries, you ever notice that when they have a natural disaster, it's magnanimous, many people die. So you have an earthquake or a flood in India. The two most populous countries are India and China. So when you have problems in those countries, it tends to be on a large scale. Malthus' argument is that this is done so as to balance back the population within those larger populous areas. And so he's saying that that population could only be checked by natural or man-made disasters such as war, plague, flood, earthquakes, and so on. Of course, we know how family planning. So, for example, the population can be checked by putting in place policies, family planning policies, to ensure that the population doesn't get out of hand. China had to do that. India, to a lesser extent, did that as well. And us in the Caribbean, here in Jamaica, we had a population family planning adage that said 2 is better than too many. And so people were being asked to limit their families to just 2, because what we saw a runaway in the 70s with the population growth. So the government of the day had to step in and said, no. This won't help us later on, and what we'll have is more poverty, more people without food. And so what they did, they came up with a family planning policy that said that 2 is better than too many. So Marxism, again, if you did Marxism very well in your Unit 1, then you're on your way to almost half of Unit 2. Marx is the same wherever we go. Marxists have a general thought pattern relating to what's happening with respect to capitalism, what happened with respect to exploitation, and so they follow the same gamut right throughout. So once you understand Marxist theory, once you understand that it is a theory, we call it a theory of economic determinism. Why? For him, the economy determines everything. The economy, money determines your values, money determines how you look at things, money determines your survival rate, and so we call it the theory of economic determinism. So that is Marx, and Marx is consistent right throughout. Whichever theory you're looking at, whichever issue, social issue, be it crime and violence, be it poverty, whichever issue, the Marxists are very, they continue along the same vein with respect to how they see this exploitation, how they see the importance of capitalism and so on. So with that said, so Marxists criticize Malthus' theory as being ahistorical. You should know that the term ahistorical from asymmetrical, a what now? With respect to COVID-19, what do we say? You're a what? You're asymptomatic, which means that you have the virus, but you're not showing the virus. You're not showing the symptoms. And so ahistorical is that there is that historical side to it, but you're not taking it into account. And states, since it's disregard how major factors or relationship between workers and capitalists change over time. So what happens is that they are saying that what Malthus did was to ignore the social relationship between and among people. They ignore these many factors that affect relationship, how workers are treated by their managers, by their owners of capital, how teachers treat students, how government treats constituencies, and so on. So he's saying that the Malthus theory ignores that. Hence the cause of homelessness and malnutrition and poverty change over time. But if you ignore all of those, how then can you say you have a theory of population when you ignore all of these social issues and the social relationship that happens over time? Also, he's saying, the Marxists are saying, how capitalism with its complex relations of production perpetuate the conditions of the poor and not necessarily their fertility. Because what is strange, or perhaps even ironic, is the fact that sometimes the poorer classes of people are more fertile, much more fertile than the richer classes of people. So he's saying that what they did, they ignore the complex relationship of these relations of production. This is ROP that we spoke about when you did the first part of the course in terms of Unit 1, the relations of production in order to produce sugar, banana, rum, cocoa, whatever it is, we have to talk to each other. We must develop a relationship in terms of how are we going to produce the product, who will do what, who will be responsible for what or for whom, and so on and so forth. So which is why we need these relations of production. So he's saying that if Malthus theory ignore all of these relations of production, then it's going to be difficult to see it as a good theory of population. So then we have the neo-Marxists. Now these are what we call neo mean new. Just like we have neo-Marxists, these are the modern day Marxists, the new Marxists. So we have these neo-Malthusian theories. So they came after Malthus, but they came along the same line. Their thought processes is along the same line as Malthus himself. So population control should be done via the reduction of the birth rate through the measures such as Planned Parenthood. So what they are saying, they are now moving beyond Malthus and saying that no, so we can't just depend on war, famine, diseases, earthquakes, and so on. We can reduce the birth rate by using policies such as Planned Parenthood. So people will decide that we're having 2 children, I'm having just 1 child, and so you have Planned Parenthood. There's a lot of issues with respect to that. Some people have a problem with it, but that is for another discussion. These theories are more concerned about large-scale destruction and environmental crises resulting from overpopulation. So of course they still went along part of the Malthus route with respect to these natural disasters and environmental crises that result in overpopulation or checking the population. According to Mohammed 2020, the neo-Malthusian theorists opine that for developed countries, pollution, inner city crime, unemployment, rising cost of living, and environmental degradation could be solved through reducing population growth. That's kind of reductionist view to thinking that all of these things can be reduced by one thing, reduce the population growth. Because we have countries that have small amount of people but still have high levels of crime. There's no saying that because you have a small population, you're not going to have population, you're not going to have population, you're not going to have crime, you're not going to have social issues. And so we take this one with a grain of salt, we apply it to the Caribbean, and we are saying, so is it that inner city crime, unemployment, and so on? We are SIDS in the Caribbean, small island developing states. And we know that although we are small island developing state, we have all of these problems. We have inner city crime, we have unemployment, rising cost of living, and environmental degradation. In fact, sometimes we believe the reason why we have some of these issues because we are SIDS. We are a small island developing state. And so to think that all of this could be reduced to just reducing population and all this is fine. Again, that's what we call a reductionist approach to thinking about population growth. Then we have the demographic transition model, which most of you would have known about. Chances are you will have 1, 2, or 3 questions about them on your MCQ. So You must remember the stages. I've put them here and what each of the stages is about. Again, bear in mind that the demographic transition model was for Europe, but we can look at each of them with respect to what has happened in the Caribbean. And so early in the history of Europe, there was, we call stage one, the high stationary stage of population growth. Here we have high birth rate, but we also have high death rate. And if we have high birth rate and high death rate, then of course, the population growth is going to be very low. So it is called the high stationary stage of population growth. Stationary because the population doesn't grow much at all. So the graph is relatively flat during that time in terms of the growth graph because we have high birth rate and high death rate. Historically, this was a period in history in which we have a lot of diseases, the Black Plague, all manner of things. We have a lot of what we call pathologies that was affecting people in Europe. So we had high birth rate, but we also had high death rate. So life expectancy in some places in Europe was 40, 50, and so on. We didn't have people living till they are 110. It was a rare occasion. So that is stage one. In the Caribbean, stage one first, we were in slavery during that time. Boy, did we have high death rate, but we also didn't have high birth rate because, of course, families were not seen as being important to the objective of slavery. So part of the family pattern that we have in the Caribbean is because the slave owners didn't facilitate we having families. So we came out of slavery. The latter part of slavery, they allowed it to some extent, but initially, no, you were not allowed to have families because they saw this idea that if you have a family on the plantation, then it could become the genesis of a revolution or revolt because you all could talk and plan. And so families were not encouraged. And so that period we didn't have high birth rate. We have relatively low birth rate, but we have seriously high death rate because, as you know, slavery was 350 odd years of decimation of the black people. And so we were killed even for just refusing to say good morning to a white person. Stage two, the early expansion stage, decline in birth rate and death rate, but high population growth. Because, of course, it kind of follows logically, you know. If you have decline in death rate, then you'd have some population growth. But they start to have the decline in birth rate. Science was now developing in Europe, so they could now introduce things to make people live longer. They could also introduce medical technology that would improve people's being able to live for a long period of time. So we had a decline in birth rate because, of course, this was a period now where we were moving down to come out of the agrarian age. During the agrarian stage, large families were encouraged because everybody worked on a plantation. We were now moving into the period of industrialization where people now go out to work in a factory, so we start to see decline in birth rate. The more you come to industrialization and the more industrialized you are, you have lower birth rate. What we are seeing now in places like Europe, like England, the age when a female is having her first child is about 26, which is different from the Latin American and the Caribbean era. The first time that somebody gets pregnant or so and is having their first child, it's still about something like 19 or 20. We have increased as well, but just marginally. But in Europe, what they are seeing is that their very low birth rate as people become more concerned about their occupation, about their life, and how do I end up being able to afford the basic things in life. So people will delay having children till later on in life, and so on. So that's why we are seeing, like in England, the birth rate, the age when a woman first have a child is, I think, 26. Most of them now will finish university first, start a career before they start a family, and not the other way around that used to happen. You start a family, then you go to university in your midlife, and so on and so forth. So stage three, the late expanding stage. So birth rates and death rates decline while population growth rate increased more slowly. But of course, if you have birth rate declining and death rate declining, your population kind of stays steady, really. So as we move, because you have to look at this historically, as we move along historically, we become more technological, so we are able now to see more technology being applied with respect to population, with respect to fertility, with respect to people being able to live longer, and so on and so forth. And because of the industrialization that is taking place, more women now are now out to work. Remember, there was a time, that's why it's so important to know the history, you know. So many of you run from history at CSEC, because it underpins almost all the courses. So what happens is now, as we move more into industrial society, women are now being forced to go out to work. We have more PPP, purchasing power parity by women. So what we have is that there's a decline in birth rate, because the more you're out working, the less time you have to have 5 and 6 and 7 children. And so that is what we are seeing. And stage 4, and so within the Caribbean, our industrialization came later, somewhat after Europe. Because Europe, once we finish the 16th, 17th century and come into the 18th century, once we reach the 19th century, we start to see the industrialization of Europe. So we start to see industrialization, opening up of factories. So people move now from on their farm with 1 and 2 workers to going to work in factories. And factories kind of saw to the demise of the single man having a little business. And so we start to see the increase in factories. But we also start to see increase in the use of technology. So we started out first, we had an agricultural mode of production, then we had an electrical mode of production, then now we're moving into an electronic mode of production, which is where we are now with the cell phone, where you can stay at work, turn on your AC, turn on your TV to tape a program for you. We are now in electronic mode. Once we get more into the industrialization, of course, we are going to have low birth rate, and hopefully, given all the technology we have now with the medicine and the vaccine, we can also reduce the death rate. And so once that is done, we have a stable population. So make sure you're able to understand each stage, what is happening at each stage, and to relate each stage to the Caribbean. That's what the syllabus have asked you to do. So I touch on one of the areas that is very common, I notice, on the past papers, urbanization. Now, when we speak of urbanization, we are here thinking of the increase in urban areas. And how do we get increase in urban areas? People migrate from the rural areas into the urban areas in search of work. For those of you who are in Jamaica, you'd understand. At the end of slavery, the blacks, the slaves left with nothing at all. So whereas the slave owners were given 20 million pounds to share up for themselves, we had nothing. Thankful to the Baptists, we got some free villages. The first one was in Slagoville, where James M. Philippo bought 650 acres of land and gave it to the ex-slave. Then we had another one in Trelawney, where the Baptists again bought 500 acres worth of land and gave it to the ex-slave. So we really had no resource. So in Jamaica, what happened was that when the slave left the plantation, they headed wherever the plantation was, and we had plantation right through the island, they headed into Kingston in search of work, because there was nothing in the rural areas. We have kind of the same thing now, although we are 180 years removed from slavery. But we still have children who come to university, get their degree, seldom go back home. What are they going back home to? We have one bank in the town. How much people can work at that one bank? We have one tax office, if any at all, in the town. We have one courthouse, one of each business, but we have a number of students coming to university and not going back home. So what we call it an urban drift, but also a brain drain of the rural areas into the urban areas. And so these are issues that you have to bear in mind, because these questions are not going to be static questions. You have to sit down and reason them out. But if you know the history and know what you're talking about, then you can reason the question and get the correct answer. So urbanization has both positives and negatives. So we have people, in fact, in Jamaica, when the people left Montego Bay, St. James, Trelawney, and came into Kingston, it wasn't the time when we had cars and cell phones, so I could call and say, hello, Daddy, I didn't get a job, so I'm gonna stay overnight with Marcia, and then I come back home 2 days' time. No, you didn't get a job. What they did, they got a piece of cardboard and they headed out to the western part of the city. That's what we now call West Kingston. What happens here? A lot of people came in search of work, didn't get any. They went there, they got a piece of cardboard, set up a little touch thing, and they stayed there till they could get a work. That became known as Dongle, and Dongle was bulldozed to set up what is now Tivoli Gardens, for those who don't know the history. And this was part of urbanization, where people came in search of work, couldn't find any. So here we look at urban positive, and we also look at the negative about urbanization. So let's look at the positive first. The centralization of economic activities, such as commercial parks, make it easier to provide infrastructure and natural resources for production. The same thing that's a positive is also a negative, but let's deal with the positive side first. So what we have what were called factory parks that they set up factory units and invite entrepreneurs to come in and rent them. So what you have was you have one general area where you have 10, 15, 20 factories. Why is that a positive? Because, of course, it makes the use of resources better. Everybody's in the same area, so they're using the same in terms of they require the same amount of electrical voltage for their operation. We have one canteen can serve 10 factories, and so on and so forth. So what we have was a centralization. So what the government in Jamaica did was to set up a lot of these free zone factory space. So we have these zones in Trelawney, Hanover, St. James, Spanish Town, and Marcus Garvey Drive in Kingston. We even have it, I think part was done out in Greendale in Spanish Town. So government built these factory spaces, and a number of entrepreneurs came in, make use of these factory spaces, and so we had a common area where people could go and seek employment. So in the evening you'd see hundreds of people waiting on the bus because they all got jobs in the factories, and so this was positive. The urban centers entice foreign investors, example for real estate and entertainment, because of course you didn't have to run up and down to find a set of businesses that your product could be segmented towards. They were all in one space. And so it was easy for you to come in as a foreign direct investor and set up operation in that same factory space, and you provide software, you provide raw materials, and so for them. Urban areas are usually melting pots of cultures. Yes, Kingston, of course, I say, is the cultural capital of the Caribbean. And perhaps if you've taught some Jamaican, they'll say it's the cultural capital of the world. Where else have you ever have such a small island with such a large reach? We have a music called reggae that is known on the world stage. We have athletes that are world beaters. We have people that have impacted the culture of the world, such as Miss Lou, such as Rex Nettleford. These are people who have impacted the world overall. So where you have urban areas, then we also have a melting pot of culture, which can only be good for the country. Today is Reggae Day, and of course, so many of the reggae artists came from, let me hear you, Trenchtown Rock, don't watch that with their Big Fish or Sprat. Yeah, we know that. And so of course, so these urban areas become the melting pot of culture. Of course, people said about Dr. Beck, I mean, I understand you. What happened to St. Mary? St. Mary come from who that? Which DJ? Remember which one? Well, you can send and tell me. St. Mary come from. So we still find that a number of the reggae artists are also from St. Mary. But of course, these urban areas provide a kind of melting pot of culture. And Kingston is a sublime example, may I tell you. In fact, even so real, if you ask me. So let's look at some of the negative. Urban drift as people move in search of work and amenities. The problem we have now in the rural areas is one of the reasons why scamming seem to have taken place in the rural areas. Students who have finished high school, if they're not going to university, it becomes very difficult to get work. Not that each successive government haven't tried hard to provide business places in these areas. But what happens is that the students, some of them don't see their future being part of getting a job in a bank or how many banks we have in the area. Because generally, as I say to you, when students are finished, they seldom return home. They stayed in Kingston. Some of them even stay right here at university, rent the room for a little longer in search of a job. When they get the job, then they rent somewhere else. And they only go back home to say hi to their parents or to look for their younger brother and sister, as the case may be. So the urban drift itself leaves the rural areas bereft of talent, bereft of people are earning money that can improve the area itself, because everybody gone to Kingston or Montego Bay. If you're in St. James is the hub of the western area, so everybody gone to St. James. If you're in St. Mary's, somewhere in St. Anne, everybody gone down to Ocho Rios, because this is where we have tax offices, government offices, banks, and you name it, in these urban centers. So these now become the point of that parish. And so what we find is we have what we call an urban drift. So when we speak of urban drift, that's what we mean. People drifting into the urban areas in search of work. Now, overpopulation leading to slums and ghettos. Now, we have seen that too in Kingston. Jamaica has about 2.6, 2.7 million people. Kingston alone have almost 1 million. So we have 14 parishes, but one parish alone have almost half of the population. You know, so you can understand, because in Kingston, we literally living on top of each other, because we have high-rise apartments, because that's what we have to build now. We are almost running out of space on the ground. So if you look around Kingston, the amount of high-rise apartments you see going up. So which is why I keep saying to people, sociologically, we're living on top of each other. Because, of course, we are getting almost overpopulated in the urban areas, in Kingston, in Montego Bay. So people work in the tourism areas in Montego Bay, can't find place to rent in Montego Bay. You have to go out of Montego Bay for a couple miles. And so what you find is that more than 80% of the people who work in the hotels live about 3 or 4 miles at least from the hotel. So you talk about transportation, then hotel, you finish work, sometimes you're on the 3 to 11 shift, you finish at 11 o'clock, you pass them at the bus stop waiting on a taxi man at 11 o'clock in the night to go home, because they live miles from where the actual hotel is. Because, of course, we have this kind of issue of overpopulation. So what we find is that we kind of push people further away from the urban centers. Burden on social amenities such as transportation and housing, that almost speak for itself. We know what happened with our transportation. We have, successive governments have tried to give the city of Kingston and the metropolitan area of Kingston, because this includes now Portmore, one of the largest dormitory community in the Caribbean. They try to provide transportation. It always going to be difficult. How do you provide transportation at an affordable cost to the consumer? How do you get people from point A to point B reasonable so that they can still afford a reasonable cost of living? How do you provide reasonable housing? Because, of course, if you're in New Kingston, I've seen one of these apartments going up, and I went to ask, so what's the price for one, the 2-bedroom? 45 million. I said, no, I didn't say for 4 2-bedroom, I said 1 2-bedroom. They said, sir, it's 45 million. And him done with me, finished with me. Yes. So the apartments now, 45 million for a little 2-bedroom, 50 million. Worse if you're in the so-called Golden Triangle. So like what I did when I finished university, I bought a house within 2 years of leaving university. I went over to Portmore and I bought a house over Portmore. That's what I could afford. There are so many people saying, but I'm not living in Portmore. Okay, so you're going to live and pay somebody else's mortgage for them by renting somewhere in Kingston where you pay $60,000 and $45,000 a month. You're paying somebody else's mortgage. If you had bought a Portmore house, you could be selling it now and moving to Avondale and move up until you get the place of your choice. And so problem with housing and transportation. Poverty and crime due to unemployment and competition of scarce resources. If you notice again, the high crime-prone areas tend to be in the urban areas. Again, the population density makes it difficult to police. Very, very difficult. When you turn to the west of the city, where you have Trenchtown, Tivoli, Lizardtown, and all those other places, you start to have difficulties in terms of police in the area because of the population density. But not only population density, but you have students who have finished school and there's no employment because there's high level of unemployment, especially among youth, because of course there are so many people after the so few jobs due to the high population density that not everybody can get a job. And the result we have is high crime and so on. So the competition for scarce resources, for jobs, for housing, for food, and so becomes problematic. So of course you can think of other, while you're there, you can think of other negatives or other positives of urbanization, because these two lists are not exhaustive. You can think of, I can think of 2 or 3 or 4 more areas of positive and negative. So you can raise them when the time comes for questions and answers. So, so population questions, we know there are a number of areas that you can raise your question about. We will say to you, for population, bear in mind that there are a number of ratios, dependency ratio, fertility rate, fecundity, and so on, that you're required to know, because you will see questions on your examination MCQ paper relating to these areas. There are a lot of terms which you should know. So are we going to take questions at this point?
Any questions?
No? Well, you can keep formulating your questions. I'm going to leave an area at the end for you to ask questions, because remember, this is how we learn. We learn when we ask questions and we get satisfactory answers to them. So please don't be shy. We are here to help you. No question is seen as stupid. No question is seen as a foolish question. You're only foolish if you have a question and don't ask it. But no question for me as a lecturer. Every question is a good question. So of course, I move on again to give you some additional information with respect to another area, crime. Because remember, Unit 2 is what we call applied sociology. So Unit 1, we go theoretical, we look at the theories, we look at religion, we look at education and how education came into the Caribbean. In Unit 2, we go into what we call applied sociology. How do we apply sociology to crime? How do we apply sociology to poverty? How do we apply sociology to inequality? How do we apply sociology to development? And so in this area now, I'm looking at the applied sociology. So we look at the different theoretical perspective on crime. Again, if you did functionalism in your Unit 1 and did it well, then you will understand how the functionalists view everything. They are very consistent, just like the Marxists, they are very consistent. So let's just take a 2-minute tutorial on functionalism. So we said that the functionalists, this was seen as what type of minor or major theoretical perspective. It was seen as a major theoretical perspective. Why did we see it as a major theoretical perspective? Because of course, the theorists took a broad view of society. They took a very broad view of society and looked to see how society operates by taking this broad view, as opposed to the minor theories, the minor approach to sociology, where they look at society through the eyes of the individual. These theories took a top-down view of society and look at how the large social institution impact the individual. So both functionalism and Marxist conflict perspective are broad theoretical perspective, because they take a top-down view of society and look to see how the large social institution, the family, the economy, religion, education, socialization impact the individual. And so this is how the functionalists view society. So for them, what was important to them was social order. So they believe that all of these social institutions function to keep society in social order. Let me give an example. So we have somebody who was turned a thief, a vagrant on society. According to the functionalists, what society does is to create social institution called prison, police station, where we take these people out of society, put them in those places for a while so we can continue peacefully in society. That's what they are saying, that these social institutions were created to ensure that social order is maintained. So take, for example, we have someone with mental issues. So what the social institutions that are developed? Bellevue Hospital, with sanitariums. So these are there to take these people out of society so we don't have to have them interrupting the daily lives. And so these social institutions are created to remove those people out of society so we can have social order. So for the functionalists, the main thing is that maintaining social order. And so it is called consensus theory because, of course, they are saying the reason why we all think alike is because we all have the same type of socialization and we are subjected to the same type of social institutions. When most of you I know will come to UWI, the premier social institution, tertiary institution in the region, and working hard to be one of the premier one in the world as well. We don't have to say to you, Michelle, stop it. Sabina, stop it. Shakalita, stop it. Because you would have gone through the same socialization in high school. Everybody, where teachers would say, when you're in class, I expect you to keep quiet until you have a question. When you have a question, Shakalita, just raise your hand. Don't shout. Miss, me. No. So by the time you reach us here at UWI, I have life easy compared to your high school teacher. Compared to those poor high school teachers that my heart cry for daily. I don't know how they do it. I think their peers should be doubled if the Prime Minister ever hear me. And so on, because they have the problem to socialize you. So when you come to us here on campus, I seldom have to say to a student, stop talking. Because you know, you have been so socialized that when you come, you sit in the lecture theater, you don't carry your boombox and playing some wicked Bob Marley. Dr. Becker, reggae, you know. Love me, I'm a Marley, man. Lift to the Marley. Chung. Yes, no. By the time you come to us, you're already fully socialized. And you sit quietly in class, 9/10 of you, and you listen to your lecture. Because you have already gone through the socialization. So this is why the functionalists are called consensus theory, because we all have what we call a value consensus. We know what seems okay. We know if you see a lady on the street hitting a little baby just a 1 or half or 2 years old, I mean, we all say, Miss, stop it, hello, stop it. Because it looked to us, we kind of have a value that we have accumulated through our socialization, that we know that something look bad about that. So we say that you have what we call a collective conscience. We all sigh if we see two people fighting and one of them cut the next one. You say, because that's your collective conscience. So for the functionalists, that's why it's called consensus theory. So they carry that same consensus thinking into the social theories of crime, poverty, the same type of thinking, which is why, you see, if you understand not to SWAT your sociological theories at Unit 1, you are easy to go in Unit 2, because we just apply. It's the same thinking, and so if you get the thinking right, then you know exactly how they view social issues. So according to them, crime is inevitable, as not everyone will be totally committed to the value consensus. So they are saying that it's not no big deal. We will have crime all the time because, of course, there are people who will not be committed. And then we go into coin in terms of the various reasons why people are not committed to the value consensus. The issue of, I realize I can't meet this social requirement of society, so what I do, I develop my own alternative social requirement. And so I'm then seen as nefarious, I'm then seen as a vagrant. And so, but we have to understand all of these in order to understand crime. And so that is important. So in terms of Cohen and Durkheim, crime is functional as it acts as a warning device and causes change, provides employment of police, soldiers. So what they are saying is that it serves a functional purpose, because for the functionalist, crime serves a functional purpose. You can imagine if we never had crime, what would we do with all those policemen? They would be unemployed. What if we wake up tomorrow and there's no crime? Prime Minister said, we are glad to announce that all the gunmen have decided that they no longer be gunmen, or gun boys, or gun girls, and so we'll have no more crime from now on. What do we do with all those security guards? What do we do with the security guards? What do we do with all the policemen? What do we do with all of Upper Camp? So for them, for the functionalists, crime serves a function. It provides employment. It may be a negative function, but it is still a function. It employs a tremendous, in fact, perhaps it's one of the biggest industry in Jamaica. Things related to crime. Just think of how many things. Everywhere you go, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 security guards. Everywhere. Every government office, every bank, and some of them you can't even sit and call them upstairs watching cameras or whatever it is. And so it serves a function. So they are saying that it really provides employment for a lot of people in terms of police, soldiers, correctional officers, etc. Now, according to Albert Cohen, he blamed the socialization of lower-class males into subcultures because they lack the opportunities to access and maintain streamlined cultural goals of society. Now, you can agree or you can disagree. So he's saying that the cultures that develop at the grassroots level is not good because, of course, it doesn't provide opportunities to provide the youth them with jobs and a good standard of living. It doesn't at all. Of course, it doesn't say whether some of them choose not to, because there are a number of us who are born in ghettos and it didn't turn out too bad for us because we choose not to go along with the mainstream culture. Because part of the mainstream culture in the ghetto is to get up early in the morning and you're on the street side or about your middle with some spliff. You don't even eat breakfast or dinner or lunch or anything, but you start to smoke some spliff. And then the thinking is that you said, come to offer your work. Well, I used to come to my yard and beg money regularly. One day I say, all right, come tidy up the yard for me. Mr. Beck, what? I work here, I'm work for the money. So I said to him, but I kind of work for mine too. So, but no, he wasn't. The part of the culture is that no. And some of you who are in inner city will know what I'm talking about. They sit on the corners and beg you night and day. Never yet. They have no intention of working. And that becomes part of the culture. So this is what Cohen is saying, that he blamed the socialization of lower class males into subcultures because they lack the opportunities to access mainstream cultural goals. So I don't see myself as being a doctor, as being a bank manager, and so they just drop out. They just say, well, it's not going to work out for me, so they just drop out and then they turn to other illegitimate means of getting money and resources. So we also have Robert K. Merton, who is also a functionalist, whose theory, again, you may get questioned on. So what I did here, I put all the various parts of it because I've seen parts of it on past papers. In fact, on the issue of past papers, if you cover 3 to 5 years of past papers, you would have covered about 70% of the questions. Yes, the question might change in format, but it's along the same vein, along the same issues. And so it's very important. So Robert K. Merton, the strain theory, lower class persons commit crime because they are not properly socialized and are unable to use the correct methods to achieve collective goals. So we thought that, okay, education is a means of achieving our goals. And people say, yeah, man, go on to school. You go to school, you're going to do well. My father just said to me that I better do well in school because turning to crime, he will kill me before the police kill me. So may his soul rest in peace, but he was a very good father. And because of those threats, I stayed away from gangs, I stayed away from guns, even as it being distributed in my yard where I live, because, and so on. So what Merton here is saying, that because they are not properly socialized They are unable to use the current method, which is education. And again, most of you know how expensive it is to go to tertiary institution. We at UW here, we try and make it as cheap as possible for you. There are also some community colleges that makes it cheap for you as well in terms of accessing your tertiary education. So it is important that you understand. So because some people couldn't achieve their goals in the normal ways, they turn to alternative means. So all of us have goals of I want a house, I want to have a beautiful girl as my wife, I want to have children, I want to be able to drive a car. So these are normal goals. So when the normal population, especially those in the lower class, find it difficult to achieve these goals, they turn to alternative means of achieving these goals. So this is what the strain theory is about. So of course, according to Merton, there is conformity, where the individual accepts both the end and the means, despite the limited responsibility, possibility of success. So things tough. Like for most of us who came out of the inner city, things was very tough. We couldn't afford some of the extra classes that I saw my friends going to. Excuse me. I couldn't afford some of the textbooks that I saw my friends, because in my time in school, they didn't rent books. You either buy the book or come out of the school. Plain and simple. So we saw that. But we didn't let that deter us from our goals. I knew that I wasn't going to turn to crime because I saw what happened. There is a popular, today's reggae day, there's a popular reggae song, brothers have turned to crime, so they die from time to time. Mm-hmm. And that is so true. They have turned to crime, so they die from time to time. So what some of us did in spite of the fact that we didn't have the means of achieving the goals, we had limited resources, but we conform. We conform. There are days when I would go to KC, and what I would do, because daddy gave me lunch money that finished from Tuesday. So he give me for Monday and Tuesday, and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. I sort out myself. So what I would do, I used to do karate, so I ask people to come and fight me, and see if you beat me, then I pay you 20. I pay you that time it was 10 cents, and if I beat you, you pay me 20 cents. And so I developed my skill as a karateka because I fight because I needed lunch money. I also started to think that I climb from upstairs to downstairs. Half people bet me that I can't climb from upstairs to downstairs and not earn a lunch money. Run gone to the canteen. Eventually, a teacher at KC, Mrs. Hanson, saw me one lunchtime and said, Beckford, come here. Where's the lunch money? I said, I don't have any teacher. What daddy gave me finished from Tuesday. It may stretch a window sometime. And she said, no, man, I'm going to share my lunch with you today, but I'm going to give you lunch tickets. So the school provide a welfare thing. Do you know that I left KC with them calling me welfare to this day? But anyway, that's for another discussion. That's for another discussion. So most of us conform. So we conform in spite of our limited possibility of success. And of course, if you watch TVJ on a Sunday afternoon with Faye Ellington, you will see a number of people who started out looking at this wall that is in front of them, with little opportunities to scale the wall, but they did. Then there's innovation, where the individual accepts the goals of society. We innovate because the individual accepts the means and uses unacceptable ways to achieve the desired goal. So we have positive innovation, so I accept the goal of society and just work to see what part of it I can achieve. But there's negative innovation, and boy, do we have it in Jamaica. If it's one set of people can innovate for the wrong things, it's Jamaicans, I tell you. I'm not bashing Jamaicans, but it's the truth. It's the truth. If there can be any means around the system, ask a Jamaican. So we have negative innovation. The individual accepts the means and uses unacceptable ways to achieve the desired goal. So I want a car, rather than work to buy a car, I thief a car. That's what I mean by negative innovation. I just go steal a car. I want to live in somewhere nice and decent. I start to extort people. So I have a regular income from crime and so on. So that's what I mean by negative innovation. Then we have ritualism. Let's do the positive one first. The individual accept the means of achieving goals. So there are certain means, for example, you want to become a doctor, you must attend university. I don't know of nowhere you can just become a doctor by just saying, you know, I know how to cut people and how to take out them gallbladder and so on and so forth. No, you have to go through the ritual of getting into medicine and going through the 5 years of medicine and 2 years of internship. So you come to UWI, that is what you have to do. So it's a kind of ritualistic. But then there's a negative ritualism. The individual rejects the actual goal. So, all right, so no, I'm in a doctor thing. In fact, I'm not into the lawyer thing. I'm not into the bank manager thing. I just stay upon them in there with my tuggies them and chill. So that is negative ritual. Because that itself becomes a ritual. You wake up at 10 in the morning. The first thing you do, you rub out a spliff in your hand middle. You go on the street corner and then you disappear once it became dark. It become dark and we don't see again till next morning on the street corner unless we the police have you under some lock and key. Then we have retreatism. Here the individuals reject the goals and become self-dependent and may turn to drugs or alcohol. Again, because retreat, you take the word literally, you retreat into yourself. So, well, I'm not do too well at school, you know, so I just stop going. I stop going to school because school is not for everybody, you know. School is not for everybody. School is not for me, really, because you know how much subject I pass after the first farm. Them are 12 subjects at first farm. I managed to eke out 2 of them. And I think I do well to eke out 2 of them, but the school thing for me now work out, you know, Mr. Beck. So I not really take on the school thing. That's what happened. So you retreat. So you reject the goal because I know I'm not going to make it in your mind, although there are many people at your stage but turn doctors and lawyers and prime minister and also to become innovators and so on. So what you do, you turn to drugs and you turn to alcohol. In other words, I can't make it here, I find some means to satisfy my time. And so I turn to drugs and I turn to alcohol. So you also have rebellion. Both the goals of society and the means of achieving them are rejected and new ones are substituted. So, you know, they say that during that time, between 13 and 19 are difficult years for children, especially for the male child. And so you are turning an adult, your hormones are changing, your body's changing on you, your thought patterns are changing, but nobody's explaining to you or even be patient with you when you're saying, but I think differently, I don't see it that way, Daddy, I don't believe so. Shut your mouth and go sit down, boy. Because, but Daddy, but Mommy. No. And so you end up with a rebellious streak. And so you reject, so okay, fine. And in my case, one of my sons, I hope I'm not listening to anybody who know him, I came home one Friday evening and saw a note. I have run away. Don't contact me. I will contact you. Of course, he watch much TV. Those things come out a movie. and so he's rebelling. And while he was rebelling, he had gotten a report that wasn't too good. So I took away all of his electronic devices. And so his rebellion was, okay, all right, let's see how this works out. I'll run away because you're going to feel bad and cry and come looking for me. Of course, I went to sleep. My wife went looking for him and so on and so forth. But then again, that's why I treat both parents for proper socialization. I went to sleep because I said to my wife, when he has and run away himself, he can come back home and so on. Okay, so we're moving on now from population and crime and deviance. As I said, there are many areas. I won't be able to cover all of them, or we could be here until tomorrow at this time. But perhaps we should have one of those marathon where they provide lunch, breakfast, and dinner. And so I could just talk, stop, eat, talk again, stop, have lunch, continue talking. But the problem going to be most they would have fallen asleep by then, or gone to play football, or gone to watch Days of Our Lives, or Young and Restless, and so on. So we move on now to poverty and development. Let me say something on development before we go into this. Again, it's one of those areas that sometimes I find students don't grasp the area very well because they don't understand the concept of development. when we speak of development, we're speaking of development of the people. If the people are developed, then the country itself will be developed. But we're looking at how development affects the people themselves. So we look at, say that we have indicators of development, we have social indicators, I'll go into them in this slide. We have social issues of development, we have economic indicators of development, but what is being done to ensure that people within the country have certain basic things. You have democracy, so your democratic right is respected. What's happening to women? Are women being treated less than humans? Because there was a time they couldn't even vote. Even after we have universal adult suffrage in 1944, women didn't have the right to vote. So how are women being treated? Because you can't say that you're developed if you're treating women less than men. Because why should they be treated less than men? Because there's what we call equality of the sexes. So they should be treated equally as men. So therefore, there are many issues with respect to development. But over time, we start to pick out indicators and believe that when we speak of development, it's only that indicator. And one of them is GDP. GDP is gross domestic product, which is the increase in the amount of goods and services produced in our country within a specified time period, usually 1 year. 1 year, usually 1 year. So it is important that, yes, it is important to have good GDP because you need cash to do everything else. But you can have excellent GDP, but you're also not considered a developed country because there are other issues that are plaguing the country that is, we say, militating against development. So it is important that you understand the concept of development. Another concept that we expect you to know is that what we mean by sustainable development. And this is, as I said to students, when in doubt, take the words at their face value. Sustainable development. How can development be sustained over a period of time? So what that means is, how do I leave for the next generation the same amount of flora and fauna that I had access to, the same sources of energy that I had access to? How do I ensure that the next generation have access to the same amount of flora and fauna and sources of energy? That is what we call sustainable development. You are ensuring by your action how you pay attention to climate change, how you pay attention to the use of fossil fuel, how you pay attention to deforestation. By doing these things, you are ensuring that the development that you are enjoying will be sustained by the next generation or by generations to come. So when we speak of sustainable development, this is what we mean. So we have development, which we have indicators, and there are many indicators of development. I'll go into them shortly. But of course, the main one people look at is increase in GDP because they say you need cash to care. But that by itself does not say that you are developed. It's like somebody who have very bad hygiene, very bad way of treating people, but have a lot of money. It's not going to work for very long for them. Not going to. It may work for a time, but won't. So likewise, if you have high GDP, but your other indicators of development are poor, then you're going to have a problem with respect to development. So we have many development theories in your syllabus. One of them is world system theory. Again, take it at face value. World system theory. Yes, Emmanuel Wallerstein. Why world system theory? Is it that the world have a system? Or should the world be seen as a system? Or should everybody conform to a particular system that becomes the world system? And so these are the questions you ask. And so what Wallerstein pointed out was how Wallerstein, of course, and Gunda Frank pointed out how the countries in the core, and the countries in the core are who we call the developed countries, United States, England, European countries, and so on. How those countries in the core develop a system to run the world economy, where they dominate every single solitary time. So this is what Emmanuel Wallerstein was talking about. So I said, third world developing, underdeveloped countries are being exploited by the developed countries. This is how we start thinking of the world system. The world economic system and measures of development keep the third world undeveloped and less developed countries in an exploitative type of relationship. We continually have to depend on them. There's never a time when things are working for us and not them. Most of the time things are working for them because, of course, they are at the apex of most of what we call developmental organizations. I go through them in this slide, where we look at World Bank, IMF, IDB, is never somebody from India or Jamaica that is the top of the World Bank. Either the World Bank must be an American, either the IMF must be a European, the deputy managing director at the IMF must be an American, and the deputy managing director at the World Bank, World Bank American, must be a European. So we are kept in a system that benefits the developed countries, but we don't benefit. And that's what the world system theory is about. Is a theory looked at by Emmanuel Wallerstein and E. Gunda Frank, that there is an economic, social trading system that dominated by the core countries in the core, and we, the countries in the periphery, who are the third world countries, we are exploited perpetually. So core countries own most of the world's capital, and as to how they come by it, if you read the history, it isn't always a good means by how they come to be in charge of most of the world's capital. We in the Caribbean, we had slavery, where our resources were exploited, and if you read Eric Williams' book, In Capitalism and Slavery, which is on the reading list for this course, he has two books. In Capitalism, Capitalism and Slavery is one, and From Columbus to Castro is another one. If you read those two books, especially In Capitalism and Slavery, Eric Williams showed how Europe and most of the major cities in Europe were developed on the backs of slaves and of slavery. How when slavery started to flourish, it benefited most of these countries in Europe, believe it or not, and Great Britain. So Great Britain holds a debt of gratitude for their development to slavery. That's why people are calling for reparation. But again, that is for another discussion, and so on. So we continue by saying there are also on the global hub centers which attract artists and intellectuals from peripheral countries. So we have lost a lot of brain drain. So in a process known as brain drain, leaving such countries with less abled individuals to help their countries progress. I went to a funeral last year in Miami. There's a lady who was one of my mentors in the church in which I grew up, Mrs. Ariel Millwood, of blessed memory. And I was surprised that almost all the people in the church while I was in Philippa Baptist Church in Spanish Town were at the funeral, but they weren't from Jamaica. They were all living in America. Because I was said, so when did you, and you. Because of course we have lost a tremendous amount of social capital in terms of brain drain. And part of the issue to start with, even you students here on campus, when you come and you believe America is the world, everybody wants to go to America. Everybody wants to go to America to work, and so on and so forth. Then we realize, that you are not treated so good as we see what happened to George Floyd and others, only because of the color of your skin. Whereas we in Jamaica, baddest thing be, yes, we sometimes have police brutality, and we are seeing less and less of it since Indicom, and we thank the Lord for that. But you can be the Prime Minister. You can be a Portia Lucretia Simpson-Miller. You can be a Andrew Holness, a Bruce Golding. You can be a PJ Patterson. And so what we are seeing is this brain drain, that because these developed countries, they will sometimes even try to attract people, your best and best. If you go to the States and do medicine, and you do very well in things like epidemiology, you're not coming back home. They are not going to allow you to come back home. The offer they're going to give you, when you look at that offer, they say, Jamaica, I can go home on vacation. I'll take up my mother and sister and my granny, but I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay. And so it's not just to do with trade in terms of goods and services, but they also look at how they exploit us by taking our brightest and best. But people say, but Mr. Dr. Beckford, if them want to go, because things better for them. Yes, but the fact still remains that they provide a carrot for the horse to follow. And so it's part of this overall world system. They want their system of government and development to be the one that everybody want to be like everybody want to be like America until now. How many people want to be like America now? So countries belonging to the periphery, to the peripheral, are the main providers of workers and raw material to core countries. So core countries exploit both of them. So for example, we founded bauxite in 1929, and we exported our first bauxite in 1940. We kept exporting bauxite in the form of alumina. That is the ore of bauxite that have one more stage to go to make it aluminium. So what you find happen? So over from 1940 till now, not one of these, well, one did, to be fair to them, one did. One factory out in Spanish Town used to make aluminium sheeting from the alumina. But all the countries where we export aluminium to, take this alumina and convert to aluminium, and they make truck bodies, car parts, pots, pans, knives and fork, and you name it, flower pot, everything. But it is done in their countries, so they get the final part, what we call the value added if you're doing MOB. The value added is done in their country. So again, it's a form of exploitation. So they take out the ore that requires the least amount of value added. And then now, the part that have the value added is done in their country. And so they have tremendous amount of industry, car industry, pot industry, pan industry, flower pot industry that are spawned out of our raw material that all we did, thank God to the Michael Manley regime of the 70s, because we never used to have any bauxite. Levy is that Michael Manley introduced what was known as a levy on bauxite. So every ton of bauxite that came out of the ground, the country benefited from it. And so, if not, we wouldn't have anything, because we sold in the bauxite, and we sold in the land with the bauxite underneath it, and that was it. So Michael Manley introduced a levy, and so we started to benefit somewhat. But again, all the value added are being made in the country of the core, in the countries of the core, in Canada, in the United States, in Great Britain, and those other places. Frank, and Frank here has been Gunda Frank, argued that this relationship of exploitation and dependency occurred historically through slavery and colonialism, and continue today through Western dominance of the international trading system, with the practice of multinational companies and other entities owned by core nations or that majority control over. So what Frank is saying is that this domination didn't just come Bram. No, it was a long history. I mentioned slavery already, that they benefited on the backs of the slave in developing their own countries. They benefited immensely. Colonialism, of course, we had Columbus came here in Jamaica in 1494. The British took over from the Spaniards in 1655 and remained here till 1962 when we had independence. So for all those years, we were being exploited. And so he's saying that this world system theory didn't just start now. There's a historical sensibility to it. And it continues today through Western dominance of the international trading system. So we have GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, which gave way to WTO in 1995. So GATT started from as early as, I think, 1919. ILO started also 1919. But lasted until 1994, which at the end of the Uruguay round, every 2 years, you used to have a round of talks. So at the end of the Uruguay round, GATT was no longer functional in dealing with the issues that had arisen in trade. So for example, the issue of intellectual property right. When GATT was being formed, that never thought of that I could insure my little finger. Because when I teach, I pointed my little finger, so I insure it for $10 million. Like, seriously, Dr. Beckford, your little finger? Yes, or my index finger. Or I could insure my face. I think I am a good-looking fellow. Like, really, Dr. Beckford, seriously? Yes. And so what we found out was that by the time we came to 1994, GATT could not serve the purpose of world trade. So we saw the demise of GATT and the start of World Trade Organization. But who really dominate World Trade Organization? And how we know who are normally the dominant parties, who provide the most money? He who pays the piper called the tune. That's a Jamaican expression, a Jamaican proverb. No, it's an English proverb. He who pays the piper called the tune. So the pipers used to stand on street corners blowing their little flute. And so you come and say, all right, play Fifth of Beethoven. And you play the Fifth of Beethoven and you give him money. So he who pays the piper called the tune. And so we find that these organizations that are supposed to be developmental organizations, the money that they put in these organizations is to give them control over the organization and over countries in the periphery. We now move on to another developmental theory that is on your syllabus. Sir Arthur Lewis. He was a vice-chancellor of this University of the West Indies. He was also a Nobel Prize. I think he won the Nobel Prize for economics. So he came up with industrialization by invitation. Actually, it was part of his PhD thesis that he came back to the region from Oxford and said, let's see how best I can put it to work in the Caribbean. So he came up with this theory of industrialization by invitation, which means what we do, let us invite in foreign direct investors. Why we need to invite in foreign direct investors? Because, of course, this is 1940, between 1940 and 1950. Remember, we are just little over 100 years removed from slavery. There was a large amount of what we call peasantry, people living in poverty. And so we didn't have people with income from which they could save that would give us investment. Because for those of you who do economics, or for those of you who do MOB, I equal S. Investment equals savings. When you save your money in the bank then can use that money as investment to lend entrepreneurs who want to go into business. So if you have no savings, then the country has no investment. And so this is what Arthur Lewis saw in 1940 when he returned to the Caribbean, that we had no saving. So therefore we had no investment. So he said, in order for us to industrialize, we need to invite in foreign direct investors, give them tax holidays, and learn from them the tricks of the trade, and so we can then industrialize. He also said that we should start a modern industry, because at the time in 1940, we were dominated mainly by agriculture. So he's saying what we should do is start a modern industry called manufacturing. We could attract some of the labor out of agriculture, because by that time we start to see diminishing for those who are doing economics at Cape and those who are doing MOB. We start to see diminishing return to scale in terms of labor. Diminished return to scale in labor means that each additional person that you added to the plot didn't result in an increased output. It resulted in a decreased output. What? Why? People are getting to each other's way. There are already too many people. And so they start to say decreasing, diminishing return to scale. So according to Lewis, our culture had diminishing return to scale. So this manufacturing could attract the laborer from our culture into manufacturing. Manufactured pay more than our culture. And people, if I want to be serious, I don't know if Lewis himself said that you pay more at the supermarket than you pay at the market. So therefore, because manufacturing goods are sold for more money. So therefore, you could attract the people out of our culture into manufacturing and develop. So that's what the Caribbean did. And that's what it's serious about. Developing undeveloped countries in an effort to plug the investment gap caused by the lack of savings, seek to attract investment from developed countries investors by offering attractive incentive. Now, did it work? So Arthur Lewis pioneered development economics because, as he articulated above, neoclassical economics theorized by Europeans was not applicable to the uniqueness of the undeveloped and third world countries. In outlining the theory of unlimited supply of labor, because that's what we have, and to this day, we still have a large amount of labor. What is unfortunate in that regard, we are sold as an area of cheap labor. We are sold that part of our strength is that you can come and get cheap labor. What does that mean for people working in those BPOs and other areas if we are sold as an area of cheap labor? So you said that Lewis also posited a dual economy. That's what I just spoke about. We had manufacture. We had our culture, which would start manufacture and attract people from out of our culture in the manufacture. That's what dual means two. So we then could industrialize from having two main areas of industrialization, our culture and manufacturing, would serve as a platform for his seminal work and industrialization by invitation. Did it work? Let's go back. Did it work? No, it didn't. It worked partially because, for example, Trinidad still is the powerhouse for manufacturing in the region. Again, part of it is due to the fact that they have large amount of resources in terms of petroleum resources. They have a thriving petroleum industry. Now, if you have cheap sources of energy, manufacturing requires tremendous amount of energy. So if you have cheap sources of energy, then you will have a comparative advantage, we say, in economics. You'll have a comparative advantage in making certain products because, one, to start out with, you have a cheap light bill. And if you have a cheap light bill in manufacturing, you are good to go. And good to go is good to go. So Trinidad has become the powerhouse in manufacturing because, of course, they have cheap sources of energy and so on. So what you find is that the other countries that didn't have cheap sources of energy didn't do very well in the dual economy side of the manufacturing. So we tried here in Jamaica in the 50s and 60s and 70s. We tried in terms of having foreign direct investors come in. We have the 807 garment factories. We know of BPO. We are always looking to foreign direct investors because our level of taxation is so high that many people, when they finish paying their taxes and utility bills and so, have very little money to save. So the banks have very little money to lend to people. And so what we find is that we require foreign direct investors to provide those amount of capital and so on. So it didn't work. Part of the issue as well is that the government as well, he didn't get the full buy-in of government in the region. He didn't at all. But that is for another course when you come to university named Industrial Sociology. We go in details when you come to the University of the West Indies, as most of you will. I'm looking forward to seeing you. So any question you have on Lewis, this you'll get one or two questions on this. You can write them down, and in the question and answer section, we will feed your questions. So we continue with developmental theories. So there's Oscar Lewis, who speaks of one theory, Oscar Lewis, the culture of poverty. pre- predisposes poor people to poverty, this culture of poverty. And it is sad you see it around you. There are people that I grew up with in the inner city to this very day. So the mother sold Sweetie right at the corner, right outside the gate. She died. She had 2 daughters. They sold Sweetie and keep selling Sweetie to this very day. I moved from that era in 1964. And they're still outside the front of the gate of the yard selling Sweetie. There's this cycle of poverty that continues over and over. And if you notice, the same people and generation after generation, like in some of us family, is the one of us those of us who went to university broke that cycle. Because if not, that cycle of poverty will be perpetuated over and over and over. And that is what Lewis was talking about. The culture of poverty that predisposes poor people to poverty continually. Then there's Herbert Gans. He said, poverty survives because it is useful to society. You may disagree if you want. If you had essays to write, then I would say disagree. Poverty provides society with individuals who have to do the essential inferior jobs that not only that no one else wants to do. For example, they are saying that if everybody is educated, then who becomes the garbage collector? If everybody is educated and went to university, then who will pack the supermarket shelf? Who will be the cashier? If everybody becomes educated, who will become domestic helpers? And so these are some, I mean, they are real questions they ask. And so, but we are saying that that can be the reason not to educate your entire population to at the tertiary level, because then you import workers from elsewhere, or you find people applying for domestic helper with degree. You pay them well, you pay them very well. And of course, Karl Marx, of course, poverty is essential for capitalist society. He's almost echoing Herbert Gans' argument, as it is a byproduct of the exploitation and economic infrastructure of such society. So he said that, of course, he has a theory of economic determinism. Money or your lot thereof determine your lot in life. So he's saying that the poor people are always going to be with us as long as we have capitalism, as long as we have inequality in the system where people, one set of people are paid very, very well and some are paid poorly. So this is a section now where we need to hear from the students. And I am very resolute in my defense as a lecturer. We need it to be interactive. We need you to send in your questions or your responses for this section. In fact, if we see good responses, we will determine if 1 or 2 people can get some credit. Some $100 credit depends. If the answer is very good, then I give it $200 credit. And so you must now send in your response. So it's up on the screen, indicators of development. I need you to tell me. I said it earlier, what I meant by GDP, what I mean by GNP, what we mean by per capita income, cost of living, Gini coefficient, BOP. The first person to get it correct will be given a phone card. For each of them. Yes. Well, I can only do for Jamaica. Yeah, I'm sorry for those that are outside of Jamaica. Because I don't know if I can send a phone card from here. But we'll think of some other ways. If we find 120 is very good, then we'll find some ways of getting something to you. So we give you a few minutes to type in your answer and send it in to us here. And so we will read it, and the correct person we will highlight. I had already given you the definition for GDP if you're listening, but feel free to repeat it. Any yet? Come on, students. You run away from a phone card. Or do I have to wait till you Google it and then send the answer? So we have GDP, GNP, per capita income, cost of living, Gini coefficient, and BOP. And we have a number of repetition with respect to sociology and Carib studies. So all of these indicators you're expected also to know for Caribbean studies, all of them, all of these indicators. So those of you who are also doing Caribbean studies, you are learning it once, so you'll know it for both courses. So we just give you 1 more minute because we need to continue. We're hoping that you would earn yourself some phone cards and that you'll also interact with us, so we know that you are listening to us and following us.
You want an explanation, or do you want to just slip?
And I'll take anything. As long as I hear from them, I'll take anything.
Sanjay, someone is just saying what GNP and GDP.
Okay, read it.
He just wrote out the words. So he wrote out just gross national product and gross domestic product. That's Sanjay
Yes. All right, Sanjay McGaw, who have just told what is GDP and GNP, but I needed to explain, to give us a definition. So it's more than just saying what it means, gross domestic product and gross national product. I need a definition. But thank you very much, at least we heard from you. So write out even one of them and send to us. And let us know which territory you are from, whether you're in Jamaica or you're outside of Jamaica.
Sherry Small says GDP, the measurement of a country's total national income. That's Sherry Small.
From?
She didn't state.
Maybe Jamaica. Since we
Right. Sherry Small, we need, could you indicate whether you are from Jamaica? Just type that yes or which country you are from.
Daniel Morgan has a question.
Okay.
So the government has no intention to eradicate poverty based on the capitalist structure of the society?
Yes. Did a question from?
Daniel Morgan.
And he's in Jamaica?
Yes.
Yes. Because they're in Jamaica, Daniel Morgan, and asked the first question outside of these that we put up here. You'll also get a phone card. So Mrs. Bollier will note your name, and so she will send a phone card to you. Yeah, we're in a capitalist system. The government tries as much as they can to eradicate poverty by instituting what we call social intervention, the PATH program, PATH, of advancement and so on. That is one of the intervention. We also have food for the elderly. We have vouchers for the elderly. We have school feeding program, a host of intervention. The government will, but of course, you make a very solid point. Because we are in a capitalist system, should we stop trying? You can imagine what would happen if governments weren't trying to relieve poverty. What would happen? So it is the job of every government. It doesn't matter what their philosophy, but it's the job of every government to reduce poverty. And governments in the region will continue to try to reduce poverty, although they are part of this capitalist system of production. They will make an effort to reduce poverty. As to whether they'll be successful will be seen by the people and the level of poverty that now reside in 1 year compared to the previous one. So we thank you very much. The person who had sent the definition, that first person, can you give me her name again?
Sherry Small.
Sherry Small, you're correct in terms of your definition. For GDP, the amount of goods and services, some people said national income, that is produced in a country, because it can be measured also in income. It could be the amount of income that is produced in a country in a given time period, usually in a year. And so that's GDP. And GNP is the same thing produced by nationals, national people in the country. Because remember here, we have people who are Jamaican, but we have some Americans, there's some Trinidadians, some Bayesian, some Kititian, some Guyanese, and other countries here. And so the GNP will look at the gross national product, outputs of goods and services produced by nationals of the country. So Sherry also get a phone card. Per capita income now.
Per capita income, I don't know if this is Katie. She says per capita income is the average income per head for all persons in a country for a year.
What's her name?
Katie.
Spell it.
K-A-D-I is what I said.
K-A-D-I, KD. Yes, you are correct. You're the first person to give us one on per capita income, so you get a phone card if you're in Jamaica. Per capita income, of course, is the income that each person, because generally what we do, we put the GDP, because with the GDP per capita, over the population, or the amount of income earned by the population over the population, so we can say just what level of income each person is expected to be earning.
So Taj is responding. Gini coefficient is used to measure wealth. Is what I'm assuming Taj is a male.
No, tell him no, it's not to measure wealth.
And then Cherie says Gini coefficient is a measurement of inequality. 0 is perfect equality and 1 signifies perfect inequality.
That's perfect. What's her name?
Cherie Sue answered the first question.
Shari Small?
Yes.
Oh, so we should have to get 2 phone cards. Yes, so you'll be given 2 phone cards. In terms of Gini coefficient, is used to measure inequality, not to measure wealth, to measure inequality. And you're right, 0 perfect equality and 1 perfect inequality. And so it's measured by a Gini coefficient, which is a ratio, or what we call a Lorenz curve, L-O-R-E-N-Z curve, a Lorenz curve. So it measures income inequality in a country. I think Jamaica's Gini coefficient is 6 point something.
Per capita income, Alexi has per capita income, the average income per head for all persons in a country.
Yeah, but we have gone through that one already.
Okay, one for
Yeah.
Danny.
So BOP we on to now. So we give the girl Cherie again for Gini coefficient.
For cost of living already?
No, we didn't get cost of living.
Cost of living, this is Cherie. Let me ensure that's the first response for cost of living. Yes, cost of living is Cherie again.
And if you earn all of them, she earn all of them.
She's saying the cost of living, the cost of maintaining a certain standard of living for persons. That's what she says for cost of living.
It requires a little more.
And Lisa says cost of living is the cost of maintaining a certain standard of living. This includes the affording of basic necessities such as
Tio. Right. So we give that person. What's that last one?
Lisa, L-Y-S-S-A, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa.
Right. So Lisa, in terms of cost of living, so you not only give the basic definition. Read it again for me.
Cost of living is the cost of maintaining a certain standard of living. This includes the affording of basic necessities
Right.
such as housing.
Right. The cost of affording a basic standard of living, but it includes basic things such as being able to have potable water, called some people say potable water, being able for you to afford basic food items to feed yourself, being able to pay rent, to live normally somewhere, to look after your children and send them to school. This is all part of the cost of living. So she also must get a phone card.
Okay.
And BOP, the last one.
BOP is an account that shows the transactions between a country and the rest of the world.
Perfect. Who is that?
Some Duncan.
Zara, that's beautiful. Your Bansa payment. Yes. Your Bansa payment is the country's transaction with the rest of the world. Perfect. So, for example, things that will show up in the Bansa payment, we buy medical facilities overseas, we pay for books overseas, we import cars, we import certain types of food like bully beef, and so on and so forth. All of this would show up in the balance of payment. It's a country's transaction with the rest of the world. So once it involves some of the overseas or involves foreign exchange, it is in your BOP. That's a separate account. Balance of payment, so it's a country's transaction with the rest of the world. So you did very well on this one. Clap yourself. Clap yourselves again. Good. So those of you who will get your phone card, we'll contact you later on. I would prefer if you don't send your phone number in the thing, got other people. Right, so good. All right, so we have other indicators of development now, again, and this is, we're still in the worksheet. So these are social indicators of development. I wish I would say the people who have one already shouldn't try, not that they shouldn't try, but should give others a chance. But of course, if we wait and the others haven't tried, then feel free to go ahead. If you alone earn 5 phone cards, no problem. So we have the social indicators of development. Health, we have life expectancy. This should be expectancy, as in CY, so pardon my error. What do you mean by life expectancy? First person. So these are social indicators of development. So we start with health. First one is life expectancy. So these are indicators that you're going to see on your question paper. Anyone yet for life expectancy? Or let's take infant mortality as well. Life expectancy, infant mortality, any of them, you can send them in early. Literacy, gender development index, and human development index. Health.
Life expectancy, which period a person is expected to live is Alexi Humphrey.
Well, Alexi Humphrey, you are correct. So the average age to which a person in the country is expected to live. Does anyone know what's the life expectancy for Jamaica? Infant mortality. And we are then going to go back to explaining why life expectancy is important. Because, of course, if the people in the country are having very short life expectancy, mean that your development is compromised. It doesn't mean the country is poor, you know. I went to Botswana in 2003. I went to Botswana. And the life expectancy of Botswana in 2003 was 42. What it means that somebody being born in 2003 did not expect to live beyond age 42. They had a serious AIDS problem, and that had reduced life expectancy to 42. If you go online now, their life expectancy is up to, I think, 65 now. They have done very well. And so they were able to, they have money, you know, Botswana sits on gold, diamond, nickel, you name it. They are what we call mineral-rich countries. And so they were able to use that money to work on the HIV problem, because part of it was a cultural problem. They had there's a desert in Botswana that have some people call the San people, S-A-N. That it was difficult to get them to understand to use a condom. It was not their culture, so they went way down to 40, 42. But they came right back up to about 69 now. They're about 67 to 69. If you go online to find out what's the life expectancy of Botswana.
I have someone for infant mortality.
Yes.
This is Chanel James. She's saying the amount of recorded deaths for children under 1.
We need a little more than that.
Money Group, Richardson says infant mortality is the total number of babies who die below age 1 per year.
We need a little more. They're missing something.
Dear Empire, infant mortality is the amount of live births per year to be calculated. So still waiting for
Yes.
that definition.
Yeah, we keep missing the part per 1,000 live births. Very important. So it's the amount of stillbirth per 1,000 live births. That is very important. So that one, nobody got that one.
What's more, they give the life expectancy for Jamaica is roughly 74.
Yes, man. In fact, what year that was? 'Cause we're up to about 76 now. That sound like, yeah, because it depends on what you consult. Because we're up to about 76 now. Literacy and Gender Development Index.
Somebody, somebody said it right after the infant mortality for everyone. They deleted it.
Oh no.
Okay.
Because if it had come in even while I was speaking, we could still give them the card.
Literacy. Literacy, I have something for literacy.
For literacy,
Right. This is the amount of percentage of persons who can write and read in a specific country.
I
Don't have to wait on anything else for literacy.
all right, we wait, and if not, we give this person. Read it again for me, the amount of.
The amount of or percentage of persons who can write and read in a specific country.
Right, the amount of persons who can write and read. Yes. We could work with that one. We'd expect a little more expansion, because literacy is not just about being able to read and write. It's being able to reason. Being able to reason. Literacy is not just to read and write. When you're educated, the education is not just to help you to read and write, but it helps you to reason and being able to acquire skills. So we give that person. What's the name of the person?
Is done Durant.
Is done?
Is done Durant.
Is done Durant. So you get a phone card for that one for literacy.
Okay.
GDI, Gender Development Index.
I got a human development index.
Okay, I take that one.
Is the statistic of life expectancy, education, and per capita indicators which are used to rank countries in the 4 tiers of human development.
Right. So it's what we call a composite index. Composite means it's not just one area but 3. So what's the name of the person again?
This is Chrissy Weber.
Chrissy Weber, you get a phone card as well. Read or respond. So it's 3-tier. Human development.
Index is the statistics of life expectancy.
So there's life expectancy,
Education.
education,
And per capita indicators.
and per capita indicators. So life expectancy, education, which is really literacy, and per capita income. Very important. And so it's a composite index. So it's 3 things that they look at in deciding how they rank countries, how they perform in these 3 areas. That's why we call it a composite index. Gender Development Index, GDI.
GDI, I have Sanjay measures gender gaps in human development achievements by accounting for differences between women and men for health knowledge and living standards. I can read that again.
Okay, give it a name.
Sanjay
Magar. Sanjay Magar, you gave a perfect definition for Gender Development Index. We'll read again. Read it out loud.
So this measures gender gaps in human development achievement.
So gender gaps in human development achievement.
By accounting for differences between women and men.
By accounting for differences between women and men.
For health knowledge and living standards.
For health, knowledge, and living standard. So here again, gender. And remember, gender is socially constructed. Gender is not sex. People tend to mix up gender and sex. So you're born male or female, but your gender is socially constructed. And so we thank you very much for that one. So we have indicated those of you who will get a phone card for those answers that you have given. Thank you very much. Good. Okay. Yes. Other HIV, other health issues in the Caribbean, we continue the same way as well. HIV, AIDS, because here now we want to know not just what is HIV, AIDS, but why is it a major issue in the Caribbean. So it's not just what is HIV, AIDS, but we want you to tell us why is HIV, AIDS a major issue. Is it still a major issue? Has it drop off the radar given COVID-19? So I need you to send in your responses. Again, we still have phone card left. Any responses yet? So we're asking whether HIV/AIDS is still a major social health issue in the Caribbean, or has it given way to COVID-19? So on that I should have put COVID-19. How could I? How could I have forgotten to put COVID-19? Well, I was taking it out of the syllabus. So anyone yet? Or you can also deal with the non-communicable diseases, whether diabetes, substance abuse, hypertension, obesity, mental health. So you can comment on any of those in terms of how do they affect us in the Caribbean, and what are the issues relating to them, and what is being done. You can go along any of those realms. So we're still on HIV/AIDS, waiting to find out is it still a major problem in the Caribbean, yes or no, and if so, why, or has it been overtaken by COVID-19, the pandemic? Still nobody yet? So apparently you have enough phone card now, so you don't want any more phone cards. Well, it's good to know that the income in the region has gone up tremendously, that people are not in want of, in Jamaica, people are not in want of a phone card. So I'll deal with HIV. You still can log in on any of the others. So for HIV/AIDS,
Somebody says yes. Chanel says yes.
Chanel who?
Chanel James.
Or Chanel James that said yes, and what to follow up?
The stigma and lack of education in regards to it. I don't know what. HIV.
Yeah, man, HIV, and that's an excellent response. Thank you very much, Chanel.
James.
James, so you can claim your phone card. HIV/AIDS, of course, the stigma is one of the biggest things. Because, of course, at first, as you know, people thought it was related to one particular group of people, homosexuals, not knowing that you do have a homosexual to get HIV/AIDS. So there is a stigma attached to it. And she went on to give another important point, the lack of education. The lack of education. Just like how we are seeing in the United States, where lack of education of COVID-19 has resulted in a surge in a number of states, especially Florida, Texas, and those states, Nebraska, and so on. We are seeing a massive surge because, of course, people do not have the information. Now, one I think that we can credit our government for in Jamaica is the deluge of information we get about COVID-19. It reached a point where I heard somebody say, "Me tell you the COVID-19 had them," but I said to them, it's necessary. Some people might just be seeing some of them for the first time. So it tells you about physical distancing, it tells you about wearing a mask, and so on and so forth. So the education is extremely important. If we are to overcome the pandemic, we have to educate the people about it. We have to also remove the stigma. Because of the stigma attached to HIV/AIDS, there are some people who will not go and have it and have a test for HIV/AIDS. They figure once people know, I'm going to be stigmatized and all manner of issues. Any other one? No. Anyone else on the communicable diseases? Well, these are what we call non-communicable diseases. In other words, even though we take the issue of non-communicable with a grain of salt, because if your parents were diabetic, it can come down to your genes, believe it or not. For example, there is a thinking, outside remittance discourse, that we came out of slavery with all of these non-communicable diseases because slavery itself was nasty, brutish, and wicked. So you see people being killed, them chop off the man, them do a manner of things to them. One of the ways you can get diabetes is if something has happened in your life. I know a gentleman, his son died in a plane crash. He was normal, eat very well, and so on. Up until that point, perfect health. Within the next time he went to the doctor after the incident, he was diabetic and hypertensive. Because these can be brought on by stress. Can be brought on by stress. So, on? Sanjay who?
This is Sanjay Magar.
Sanjay Magar, we thank you for that question. It is all of the above. All of the above. You remember all of the above? All that you refer to, all of them, they are correct. Because, of course, there's the ignorance, but there's also the politicization of it. The president doesn't wear a mask. How you expect other people who are dead followers of you to wear a mask? And so there's that ignorance. But there's also the thinking that no, it can't happen to me, and no, it's a democratic thing. I'm a Republican, and so if I don't wear a mask, it will go away. So it's all of the above, Sanjay, all of the above. The issue of substance abuse, any question on it? We did look at the strain theory with Merton to look at the issues of innovation, rebellion, and in one of them we said that one of the reasons that people recoil from, they recoil from because they can't achieve the objective, so they recoil, they retreat. We call it retreatism. They retreat, and one of the things that they do is that they abuse substances. And so it is a problem, albeit, and this is no comfort, it is not as high as in the United States, but we still have some level of substance abuse within the Caribbean and within Jamaica. And because some people see it as an era in which they can retreat when the issues of life take them, then they go and they abuse substances. Obesity, I want students to tell me whether you are seeing obesity in your school. If you think obesity is a problem in your country, I need one student to tell me about it and to give me some comment. I won't tell you what the level of the phone card I'll give you.
Somebody here.
What's the name?
Empire. Okay. Sanjay agrees that leaders play a major role.
Right, good.
Go ahead with it.
So, Empire saying HIV/AIDS has mostly affected many people in the Caribbean in rising numbers. Most of the young people, due to lack of protected sex treatments and the wear condom for safer sex, have helped. I think
Sanjay?
this is Empire.
Oh, Empire.
And
that is...
And the wearing, I think they probably wanted to say the wearing of condom for safe sex could have helped.
Empire, is her name?
Yes.
I assume is that her? Yes, Empire. Well, we'll also give you a phone card. That is so correct. You are given an expanded explanation as to the prevalence of HIV. We still think it is much too high in the Caribbean, but we are seeing, thank the Lord, a decrease in the spread of HIV. We still think that there are still too many people having unprotected sex. So we are seeing increases still, but not a massive increase. The curve isn't rising sharply. The curve is relatively flat. But the fact remains that from the fact we have a curve, means we have people being infected with HIV. And so we are very concerned about it. And so we thank you for that one. Anybody on obesity?
Obesity has become a great problem in Jamaica. As for international fast food chains, as more international fast food chains flood the island.
That one, tell her I give her $300 phone card. Just make a note for me. The fact that you were willing to take on the challenge, what's her name? Abigail White. You have earned yourself not one, not two, not $250, not $280, $300 worth of phone card. By the time you finish, you're going for just go change my salary check and give it to Mrs. Bolera Horton and say, send this to the children of the region for me.
The government realizing this issue saw the need to ban sweet and sugar beverages in school.
And that is correct. She expanded it by saying that the government, in seeing what has happened with obesity, has made the positive move of banning sweet and sugary drinks from school menu. That is so true. Because obesity continues to be a problem in that, but it has many parts. The one part she hasn't touched, but I would knock her for that. Eating healthy is expensive. Eating healthy or healthily is muy expensivo, very expensive. When you go to the store, to the supermarket, if you say I'm eating healthy this month, your bill is not going to be very what it was last time. Because it means you're not buying flour, you're not buying bread, you're not buying bacon and eggs and so on, you're not buying sausage. So what in heaven's name are you going to buy? And do you have the money to buy those things? So we understand the challenges. Hence, again, on the issue of obesity and health, we look at how it is more prevalent among poor people. Believe it or not, because to eat healthy is expensive. To eat healthy is expensive. And so what we are seeing is that a number, for example, when I was growing up, you get the same things all the time. Rice and peas and chicken, rice and peas and chicken, corrugated and rice and peas, corrugated and white rice, dumpling and banana and yam and chicken back and chicken foot and so on and so forth. You eat the same things all the time because your parents couldn't afford anything else. In fact, when people ask me, is there anything you don't eat? I said, no, because my father couldn't put something on the table and I tell him I don't want it and sit down where and sleep where that night.
I have two other comments on obesity. So Lisa says obesity has been prevalent in children throughout the years, but due to the bans on imposed in 2019 by the government, I think that levels have decreased in a sense. Sarah says obesity also rises because children are not encouraged to exercise at home. The school takes on the responsibility mostly.
Very good, especially that last point by Sarah. Thank you, Lisa. But that last point by Sarah, and she will give a $100 phone card too. The lifestyle, the sedentary lifestyle caused by postmodernism. You have all of these games. There, in my time at school, lunchtime you go play cowboy and thief, or lick and freeze, or the girls don't play dandy shandy, or jacks, or whatever. Now we sit on that couch for hours and then playing, what's the shooting one again? That,
G.
PUBG. Or one of these, when it was my time, it was Mario. And you get hooked on Mario. And the only time you pause is to go to the bathroom. And it's almost when it's coming down on you. Because, and so you're into sedentary lifestyle. And so that's a very good point, excellent point. So we find that obesity is increasing because you are so glued to the TV that, and when you're watching TV, you eat more. People don't realize it. When you're watching TV, you snack more than where you're outside playing. You're outside playing, you play for 2 hours, and you come and have a snack. You're at the TV, you get up, you feel some ice cream, you take some ice cream. I feel for some orange juice, I get some orange juice. I feel for some cookie, I get some cookie. And you're eating constantly, and that has led to the obesity. So this is being credited to the postmodern society in which we live, where we have all of these sedentary lifestyle games that you do. And not only that, the life itself is very sedentary. Everything, there's an app for everything. There's an app for everything. And there is something for you to do. So in my time, you go and you go turn on the TV, you have to go touch the TV, you get up. You want, there's no channel to change, however. But now, everything is on a remote, everything. I can stay at work and turn on the remote in my house. I can stay at home, turn on the TV in my home. I can stay upstairs and turn on the TV downstairs if the one upstairs is not working. And so we into a sedentary lifestyle, and that has added significantly to obesity. I want to know if anyone has anything on mental health.
But here's one that Sanjay continues to say obesity causes hypertension, stroke, diabetes, and lots of persons are not educated on how much it will affect them as a people.
Just go.
That's Sanjay.
Go.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent point. In that.
And she also said that obesity affects people, and we refer to persons as fluffy, and some people,
I see where he's going with it. I see where he's going with it. That's an excellent point, Sanjay. Excellent point. Because what you're saying is that obesity actually circumnavigates almost all the other except HIV/AIDS, the other non-communicable diseases. Because for it, you can get diabetes, hypertension, and I dare say you can even go mental by just being extremely obese. And so it really circumnavigates. Then it comes to other social issue. Self-presentation, self-hate, self-loathing we call it, where you after a time don't like yourself, you don't like how you look, And so a lot of other social issues start to come in. And then we find too that people who are obese tend to be bullied more than people who are not, believe it or not. And so these are some of the issues. We're still waiting on a comment on mental health.
Chanel here has a comment.
Let him read it since he has the tape.
Yeah. I feel like mental health is becoming more of an issue in the Caribbean as it isn't as recognized as it should be and tends to be overlooked.
What's her name?
This is Chanel. Sanjay is a female, by the way.
Yeah. Sanjay is a female. Okay. Sorry about that, Sanjay. Yeah. Chanel, what's Chanel's surname?
James.
Chanel James, excellent point, and you get a $100 credit for this. Mental health is one of those unseen yet crescent disorders that we have in the Caribbean. Crescent, it's unseen, but crescent, when we speak of crescent in terms of fertility. So we say a woman is very crescent, or what we call very fecund. It's happening and happening quite a lot, but we're really not paying attention to it. So we say it's unseen yet crescent. And so it comes out of stigma. People don't want a doctor to tell them that your child is mentally unstable. So it comes with a stigma. We have had cases in school that I'm associated with where the child displays certain type of behavior more than once. And when we confronted the parents, they're reluctant at first. Then they indicate to us that he is on medication for mental disorder, but they didn't want to tell. We said, no, but you have to leave the tablets at school. You have to leave whatever he's taking at school. So we want to ensure that once he's here, he's on it. Because we realized 2 months in a row, past 10 o'clock, after it passed that time, him just get crazy and anybody saying to him, stop at them. And when we took him to the nurse, we took him to a doctor, said, call the parents, because this child seemed to have a mental disorder. Yes, he did. But the teachers, the parents said nothing to us at the school, nothing. And so correct, it's one of those things that are unseen yet crescent. And we keep seeing it more and more and wondering to what extent COVID-19 itself will result in more mental disorder.
I have Money Richards here who says, due to the issue of poverty or cost of living, people's stress level do increase, causing it to trigger mental health issues.
Yes, that's a line of argument. I don't think we have enough data to show that, because what you're actually saying is that the poor class people go mad more than the upper class people, and we are saying no, not necessarily. Not necessarily, but I can understand your line of reasoning. We look at availability of resources, antiretroviral drugs, as in the case of HIV. It is now being available on a larger scale, so we are able to we are able to reduce the spread and also the level of mortality that results from it, because the antiretroviral drugs, a cocktail of it was made relatively cheap compared to what it used to cost initially. And so I think it was an initiative by President Clinton that, along with some drug company, so they make the cocktail of antiretroviral drugs cheap enough that a person that not earn a lot of money could afford the antiretroviral drugs, and so slow the spread.
Someone else. Sanjay continues, I feel like religion played a huge role with mental health. A lot of religious people link the abnormal behaviors to demons and think that it can be fixed by prayers.
What's the name of the person?
Sanjay.
Sanjay again. Sanjay is a female. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it to you, but you're right. I hate to say it not to you, but you're right. There is a strong link between mental illness and obia, or mental illness and the occult, mental illness and religion. There are strong correlation, and within the region, if we think you are getting mental, if in some district across the region, if we think you're exhibiting signs of mental health, the first place we carry to is not the doctor, but to an obia man or a faith healer, because we believe somebody sent dopey at your yard who licking at your head that made you mental. So you're correct, you're correct, Sanjay. That especially in Jamaica, we have a strong correlation between mental illness and obia. We think people seek redress to mental illness by going to a faith healer or to deal in the occult. Thank you very much.
Hakeem Noel says,
Persons who suffer with low self-esteem and pay attention to what people think is the ideal body type. They try to fit in and often give up becoming mentally depressed, overeat, and become obese. This is Hakeem Noel.
Yeah, there is such a link, Akeem. There is such a link. Although, again, as a social scientist, I go for the figures. I look at what are the research, what is the research saying? Because if research cannot back it up. So we know, because we have conjectures that, yes, some people eat till and get mental and so on. But do we have the research to show? No, we don't. Because we are just seeing a reawakening of people's interest in mental health. But it's still not been given the budget that it requires. It's still not been given the attention that it requires. And it's still beset by stigma, by people who have relative children who are mentally ill. There is a reluctance to seek medical treatment for them or medical treatment in the appropriate channels. There's still that. We have to move on. Poverty and the environment. We want to move on to the environment. So climate change, we want to, again, for you to tell us in terms of climate change, how does climate change affect, what is climate change and how it affects the region. There's, pollution I dealt with already. And so we'll give cards for climate change and reforestation, $100 card each for those two. The first person to give us a reasonable explanation of the effect of climate change on the region and how we come about by deforestation and the effect on the region. And you notice that all of these were taken out of your syllabus, the CAPE syllabus that is online. I pick all of these out of it. Nothing I add to. All of these came out of your CAPE Sociology syllabus. All of it, which means that you could possibly get questioned in any of these areas. So it's sociological, believe it or not, because it affects poverty and the environment. So I know some of you are saying, but there's an overlap between this and CARP study. Yes, everything is relative according to Albert Einstein. Everything is very relative. So you are my relative, and then I am relative of your cousin. So climate change and deforestation. Any comment from anyone? We're coming to an end now, so try and get your $100 credit. Anybody on climate change? So I'll go until you log in on climate change and deforestation. I can't speak on pollution. Pollution, of course, happens so easily. Notice I put we have air pollution, we have noise pollution, we have water pollution, and we have land pollution. All of them we see happening around us. And if we're not careful, the fact that we are small island development states, we are affected even more immediately. When we pollute the rivers around us, a lot of us, the water source that we drink, that we wash, that we use to water our plants and so on, comes from the river. So once we pollute the water, then we are polluting sources of water. The water that we get from rivers flows into dams and reservoirs, are treated, and then we drink them as potable water. And so it's very important. Once we have air pollution, then we also will have water pollution, because rain falls, and then those pollutants are then fed into rivers and streams and into people's ears and nose and eyes and mouths and so on. So air pollutants are also extremely difficult to deal with. We have noise pollution. That one we generally can ask you to turn off the set, but in some areas it is night and day. The music blares in your ears night and day. And land pollution, we have areas in which we deposit our refuse. We have dump sites We have dump sites in St. Anne, dump sites in Kingston, dump sites in Montego Bay, but there are people who dump their garbage any which way. It causes problem, especially before we even since we have the ban on plastic, because these are then washed into rivers and streams or into the sea. They clog up the fishermen or the fisher folks, nets and so on, and so they want to catch fish, but they can't catch fish. When they come, the net is full of all type of boxes and plastic bottles and so on and so forth. And so although it is land pollutants, they end up in the sea. Anyone on climate change yet or deforestation?
I see it's more like our mention from Sanjay for climate change. Climate change, the temperature has been rising and the sea levels have been rising. That's it. But Sanjay goes on to say something about this deforestation. It involves the removal of forests with the land used for farming, urban needs, or industrial reasons. This is Sanjay for deforestation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me hear Chanel.
Chanel, yeah, I see Chanel. I'll go back. Chanel says about industrialization has become a gateway for an increase in pollution.
That is true, but I'd prefer to give Sanjay.
For deforestation.
For deforestation.
Okay.
Climate change. I need a little more for climate change.
Climate change from KD. Climate change is changes in climatic conditions. It affects us as some Caribbean countries are mainly agricultural and can affect the growth of crops. Climate change can also change sea levels, which makes way for rapid high category hurricanes.
What's the name of the person?
That's Katie. I think Katie is from St. Vincent. But yes, she's been answering.
Yes, as I said, we have to ask Mrs. Bullier to find some way. Yes, so that is correct. Climate change is one of those things that I tell you. It is wide, it is epidemic almost, because of course, and then we in the Caribbean, being small island developing states, we feel the effect even more. A lot of the region of islands that if we have sea level rises above 6 inches, places will be inundated with water. We have communities that live by the sea, and each time that we have the levels in the atmosphere rising, then we have what you see breaking off our polar ice caps that then break off, fall into the sea, and sea level rises. And so what we are seeing now is that climate change have a deleterious effect on the environment. When the climate is also very, as moved from what it normally used to be, then there are crops that used to give a certain amount of yield. We no longer get that yield. And so it is extensive in terms of how it affects different parts of the environment. It even affects how animals, where they go to graze, how they where they lay their eggs, where they stay, where they migrate to for the summer, all manner of things. It affects so many different areas. That's why it is a very, very important area. It's in this course. It is also in the course on the Cape and the environment, and it's also in Carib studies because of the nature of it. We have to move on. Yeah, we have got to that one already. Right. We move on now to causes of major Caribbean social issues. Of course, some of them we have touched on already. We are saying that economic factors, slavery, issues of obesity, issues of hypertension, because the reason why black people exhibit higher propensity for hypertension and obesity can be traced to slavery. A study was done by a university in England, can't remember the university, that showed that is the reason why there's a higher propensity of black people to be saddled with hypertension and obesity, and also to the other one, hypertension, obesity, and diabetes. And so there are historical factors: slavery, colonialism, and independence. Colonialism and slavery. Because under colonialism, remember, we had slavery. And how we were treated, what we were given to eat, the type of work we were given, and just the general treatment of black people resulted in hypertension and obesity and diabetes. There are economic organizations, and these you should know, especially for those doing Carib studies. CDB means the Caribbean Development Bank, which is headquartered in Barbados. It's the development bank of the region. And so it helped us with respect to our economic institution, but also it helps us in terms of social intervention. So it's not because it's a bank, but it also fund social intervention. It also fund economic intervention. And so these economic organizations help us with development. The World Bank, which is the same as the IBRD, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, give both what we call them balance of payment support loan as well as project loans. The Student Loan Bureau, which most of you will perhaps make use of to help with your tertiary education, was funded by the World Bank. A number of highways were also funded by the World Bank. What was missing from there too was IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, which was the bank for the Latin America and the Caribbean area. It used to be the IADB. It was changed a couple years ago to IDB, Inter-American Development Bank. So it's also a bank for the region that helps with development. And the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, is one of those that we also have, the economic organization. It's headquartered in Washington, D.C., and it and the World Bank was started at what we call Bretton Woods in 1944, at the end of World War II, to help rebuild Europe. But it was extended to other areas, including Asia and Latin America and the Caribbean. Then there are social organizations, NGOs, and we are ever thankful for some of these NGOs, Jamaicans for Justice, and we can name a plethora of them. Second Help, Second Nature, there are so many of them that help us to deal with social issues. And government depends on these organizations to help, because government alone can't do everything. Government do not have the money to do everything. So these non-governmental organizations, some of them also help keep government on track. So for example, the issues of integrity, we have an integrity commission, we have many NGOs, non-government organizations. The social structure, we look at the social structure with respect to how do we account for poverty? How do we account for some of the extreme poverty that we see? Is it that the structure of society itself put some people in poverty and maintain them in poverty? Could be true. Could it be that the social structure prevents some people from achieving? Could it be that the social inequality and economic inequality that is a result of the social structure we have is what caused some of the social issues we have, and the main one being poverty? Socialization and social change. The socialization that we have, it's good, but it also can be bad. It's good in that we are seeing, there are some researchers that are now saying, we are able to deal with the COVID-19 because of the social structure we have and the requirement of vaccination at an early age. It has started, we don't hear it in the States, but it comes up every now and then in one and two research, that given that we have high levels of vaccination at the infant stage, it has served us well later on to fight off and ward off all of these viruses that we have seen coming up. And so people are saying that perhaps one of the reasons, yes, we have done well to limit the spread, but also we're not seeing the level of mortality that we are seeing in other territories, because we have high levels of vaccination that has worked very well for us. And so people are attributing our low level of death during COVID-19 to that. And if you notice, that we have in Jamaica 600 and an amount of COVID-19 people testing positive, but 500 odd have recovered. So we really are doing very well with respect to our bodies are coping with it, and so we give thanks and praise for that. And we dealt with climate change already. Culture, customs, belief, values, practices. It's positive. Today is Reggae Day, so we're thankful for reggae and how many people are able to, the Jamaican expression we say, put on a pot, eat a food, because of their intervention, because of the participating in the culture of the country. And the culture goes, everything is culture. Schools is part of the culture. We look at issues such as the music, dance, round robins, these round robins where all the bars in one area will close and go to one bar and have a party. It kind of curtailed for the time being because of COVID-19, but we look forward to round robin. There are some of us who are into dancehall music. Before the lockdown, I go to wedding almost every Wednesday night because dancehall is my thing, despite my age. And so, but when you look at the economic nature that it provides, the economic resource it provides for people, the man who come and sell is all the various things in terms of peanut and drinks and the beer and everything, soup, the person who sells soup and so on, that it really helps us. But in terms of major social issue, they become social issues in themselves. We have the issue of drug abuse. We have the issue in the belief system affecting the mental health, where we are saying that the first place that some Jamaicans run to is to the Obeah or the occult to deal with mental issues. And so there are also practices. And we dealt with climate change already. So effect of major issues, employment and cost of living. Of course, if we have very good cost of living and employment, then you can deal with some of the social issues that come your way. There are social issues with family. One of them you deal with in health in terms of the dependency ratio, the amount of people in the household who have working age who are working over those who are not working. And so where we find that ratio is getting very, very high, we have social issues, including crime and violence. Education, social instability, and migration. When we have social instability, then the whole social structure is affected, and we have issues of crime and violence and poverty and so on. And of course, we have the rural-urban migration, but we have migration. People migrate abroad to get rid of the crime. Culture, popular cultural influences, traditional practices, and so help us in terms of the effect of some of the issues. Politics, policies, programs, political instability. Again, if your politics become very toxic, then your social infrastructure is going to become very toxic. And political instability results in social instability as well. And we dealt with the environmental factors as well. So measures to address Caribbean social issues. We can have some short-term and some long-term. These are the last two issues that we are dealing with as we are coming up on 12 o'clock. And so we ask you, what are some of the short-term measures to address short-term social issues? The reason we're asking you, although you don't have a written paper, but you will see some of the issues on the exam paper, which of the following could be seen as a more likely thing to address the issue of poverty, the issue of crime, and so on. So I have short-term issue and long-term. I'll take two short-term issues and two long-term issues, and then we close. Any comments, short-term issues to address Caribbean social issues? Just pick one. Pick crime, you can pick poverty, you can pick development, and so we need two short-term and two long-term. So if you see them on your exam paper, you can know that this one is correct, this one is more likely to alleviate some of the social issue of crime, of poverty, and so on. Any short-term issue from anyone? Anybody online yet?
Chanel says something. Chanel says crime / legalization / law. I guess that's short. And Chrissy says
Well, one second, give me Chanel short term.
crime legalization / law.
But we already have a legalization of ganja in Jamaica. But what should I explain what you mean by law? Because we have the laws.
Right.
Do they have teeth? That's another discussion. Next person.
Chrissy says long-term poverty.
Yeah, what about poverty? How do we measure to address poverty? Because it's measured to address each of the poverty, you know. What are some of the issues?
Sanjay says welfare programs for poverty. Welfare programs.
We already have welfare programs. Is he advocating more welfare programs? Because we do have a plethora of welfare programs right throughout the Caribbean, in almost every single Caribbean island.
All right. Abigail White says long-term to address development incentives for fresh / new entrepreneurs.
A good one, but we also have it in place. We have that kind of incentive in place. But thank you all very much. We have to close it here. We thank you very much. And we thank those of you who have participated. Remember to claim those who we said you will get your phone card. And we thank you for those who are in the region, outside of Jamaica. We thank you very much for participating. And we wish you all the best in your examination. Please think, please read, and please communicate with somebody else in your class, in your school, outside your school. Please communicate. And we wish you all the best. And we look forward to seeing you all at UWI come September this year or September next year. Because Unit 2, you'll be coming this year. We're looking forward to seeing you. And so we welcome you and thank you again for your participation.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And we really want to say thank you, Dr. Beckford, for taking the time out to come and facilitate this workshop with our students. I know everybody is now ready to go and write their CAPE Unit 2 Sociology paper. Thank you very much for coming. I add my thanks to Dr. Beckford, and we look forward to seeing you, as he said, at the UWI. And you know that the UWI is the #1 university in the English-speaking Caribbean, ranked among the top 4% best universities in the world. And so UWI invites you to apply now. If you have not yet applied and you're in upper 6th or lower 6th, applications are still open for most of our programs. If you have any questions relating to application, you may call us, the Marketing, Recruitment and Communications Office at 876-977-5941 or 876-935-8701. So any questions relating to application, so it's not too late to apply. And just to add that if you are interested in sociology, you can add that to one of your majors because the UWI allows you to do double majors. So if you're doing something in the sciences, you can mix the sciences with sociology, the arts with sociology. Thank you again, Dr. Beckford, for taking the time out to share with our prospective students. All the very best to you, students. You should be able to do a wonderful paper now. So ace it, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.